One of the most controversial trades involving the New York Knicks over the past few years was the infamous Porzingis trade. In this move, the Knicks traded Porzingis, an all-star big who they drafted with the 4th pick, along with Tim Hardaway Jr. and Courtney Lee, to the Mavs in exchange for Derrick Rose Jr., DeAndre Jordan, Wesley Matthews, and 2 first-round picks. Once this trade was made, the narrative was that the Mavs were the obvious winner because they landed an all-star player to pair next to Luka for a pretty low trade package. And it looked even more one-sided when KD and Kyrie, the main 2 players who the Knicks were opening up cap space for, signed with the Nets instead of them. But with Porzingis having another disappointing playoffs for the Mavericks, I believe now's a good time to review the trade. So let's look at what both sides got to determine who won the trade 2 years later. But before we continue, please like the video and subscribe, as your support is very much appreciated. Now let's get started. Let's start with the Knicks. The only player that really matters for the Knicks that they got back in that trade is Derrick Rose Jr., as neither Wesley Matthews or DeAndre Jordan stuck around long term. DSJ was really disappointing for the Knicks because he's someone that flashed all-star potential early in his career, but just never panned out. Even in his first season with the Knicks, he averaged 15 points and 5 assists per game. His efficiency and defense was bad, but there was enough flashes to think that he could be the point guard of the future. DSJ had a great ability to blow by defenders and finish at the rim with his athleticism, but the problem was that his complete lack of a jumper held his game back. Unfortunately, DSJ only got worse from here. Even though the Knicks coaching staff worked with him to remake his jump shot, he was awful, averaging just 5 points per game on 34% shooting from the field. To be fair to DSJ, he was dealing with injury and the tragic death of his stepmom, but he was still a disappointment nonetheless. This year was no different for DSJ, as he found himself out the rotation early in the season, and at that point, it was fair to give him the bust label. While the acquisition of DSJ was completely a wash, the Knicks were able to turn lemons into lemonade when they traded DSJ along with a 2nd-round pick to the Pistons in exchange for D Rose. The trade for Derrick Rose probably worked out better than even the front office thought, because he was excellent in the games that he played for New York. After the trade, the Knicks went from a team floating around 500 to a dominant team at the end of the year, even going on a win streak of 9 games, and Derrick Rose scoring and playmaking off the bench was a huge part of that. So the only remnants of the KP trade for the Knicks has been Derrick Rose, who's been a godsend, and the 2 first-round picks. The 2021 Dallas pick is the 21st pick in this draft, and we'll have to wait 2 years to see where the 2023 Dallas pick lands. Obviously, the picks are a question mark because we have to see who the Knicks draft, but the Knicks front office seems to be good at finding those diamonds in the rough late in the draft. Emmanuel Quickley is the latest example of that, as he was taken with the 25th pick last year. While Derrick Rose and 2 first-rounders certainly looks better than we originally thought, what really makes the trade look better for the Knicks is Porzingis. These past couple of years, KP is proving that he isn't a player that's worth a max contract. He's still very good, but he's injury prone and unreliable. He averaged 20 points and 9 boards a game the past 2 years, but this season, he only played in 43 regular season games, and last season, he only played in 57. And what's even more damning is what he's done in the postseason. In the Dallas Clippers series, KP only averaged 13 points and 5 boards a game. Luka played phenomenal, but KP did not play like the all-star he's getting paid to be, and that certainly contributed to Dallas losing. Last season, KP played well in the playoffs, averaging 24 points per game in the series against the Clippers, including 34 points in Game 3, but he tore his meniscus in the series, which contributed to the Mavericks losing. So this is the 2nd straight year of Porzingis coming up short in the playoffs. With the benefit of hindsight, it's clear that trading Porzingis was a good idea for the Knicks, as he isn't a player that's worth a 5-year maximum contract, especially with his injury history, while Derrick Rose and 2 first-round picks certainly isn't the greatest return for an all-star. They certainly weren't fleeced. As for Dallas, this isn't a trade that has worked out as they would have hoped. The trade certainly made plenty of sense at the time. The Mavericks lucked out with the Luka pick, and he was a star the second he stepped foot on the NBA floor. The second you draft an all-star, the clock starts ticking to immediately build a contending team around them because players have more power to leave bad situations than they ever had before. The Mavericks thought that Porzingis would give Luka the all-star teammate to make the Mavericks contenders. He was an all-star in New York, and the hope was that after he recovered from his torn ACL, he would get right back to where he left off. Luka has catapulted his way into superstardom, but unfortunately, KP continues to be a disappointment. Again, his regular season numbers are very good, but he's still very injury prone, and this is the second straight year of him not delivering in the playoffs. Luka had an unreal playoffs. He averaged 34 points, 8 rebounds, and 10 assists per game in the series. He played like the best player in the Clippers series, even better than Kawhi. And with this series being so close, if Porzingis had played like an all-star throughout the series, the Mavericks probably would have been the team advancing to the second round. Even the Mavericks front office has to admit that KP is not bringing max player production. And what's pretty damning is that he's owed $30 million a season for the next 3 years, which significantly lowers the cap space that the Mavs will have to build around Luka. While KP looked like a good addition at the time, the decision to trade for him and max him out certainly isn't looking good in hindsight. Tim Hardaway Jr. is also worth mentioning. This is a classic example of one man's trash being another man's treasure. The Knicks wanted out of Hardaway's bloated contract, and he's turned into a perfect complement for Luka. He absolutely balled out in this year's playoffs, averaging 18 points per game while shooting a scorching hot 46% from 3. He makes Luka even tougher to guard because if you double Luka, he could easily find Hardaway for 3 where he's a knockdown shooter. So while Porzingis hasn't really worked out, Hardaway has turned out to be an excellent pickup for Dallas. So guys, that just about wraps it up. There are still more events that we need to see unfold to fully grade this trade. What did the Knicks do with the 2 Dallas picks? How will Dallas perform with KP and Luka going forward? We'll find out in the coming years, but the KP trade certainly looks different for both sides than when it originally happened back in 2019. But that's going to be it for me. I want to hear what you guys think. Who won the KP trade? If you were a fan of the Knicks or the fan of the Mavericks, would you do the trade again? Tell me in the comments. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe if you liked it, and enjoy the rest of your day.